This is the third Sunday in Easter. And on this day, we're returning to the Gospel of Luke. Now, a bit of explanation and reminder of the various Gospels, because all four have their own literary style, their own theology, their own intention. And we travel a loose theme through it all. A loose line does connect them, but they all have their own quirks and characteristics. So Mark, who we saw on Easter Sunday, that's the drama, the gospel that builds up slowly and pulls you in. So at the very end, when you read "The Women Didn't Tell," you are so into the story that you need to go and tell on the women's behalf. You want to make sure that the story continues. Then last week we looked at John. John's a very different gospel. John, right from the beginning, acknowledges Jesus is the Messiah, and everything that is told in John is an example of how Jesus is the Messiah and proof, so that they can always tell who he is. It's a bit of a trial in that regard. That the stories are always showing a Jesus who is always in command and always sure of who he is, and there's no secrets. Mark is full of secrets. Then we get to Luke. Luke is the social action, the social justice gospel. In Luke, more people are fed and healed than in any of the other gospels. And in fact, food comes up today in the story we're looking at. But in Luke's gospel, it is very much a hands on, get yourself dirty, get involved kind of gospel. So we have those three gospels in the past 3 weeks of this Easter season. So turning to Luke, we have the story of Jesus appearing in the upper room after the road to Emmaus. And again, I've said this before, one of the really rough things about chopping up the gospel and only reading a part of it is you miss the context and you miss what goes beforehand. So in this last chapter of Luke, we start with the women seeing the temple, the tomb is empty, and being told that Jesus is not there. And then they tell the disciples who don't believe them. And we have this little throwaway line where Peter rushes back, sees the empty tomb, doesn't understand what's going on. Then right away we go into this road to Emmaus. And what's really unique of the road to Emmaus is that the two characters that Jesus is talking to, we haven't met them before. These are other followers, we presume, that were part of the entire experience, but they left before any of the resurrection narrative really got lived out. Who they might have gone home for other reasons. They might have just been getting out of the way because the political tension was high. But Jesus gives a whole other experience to those who, for all intents and purposes, were not in the upper room with the 11 and everybody else who was around them. And then from there, immediately they're rushing back to Jerusalem to tell what they experienced. And then we have this story that we're looking at today. Jesus appears in a room. They're all talking to each other, like, and saying, "Well, Simon saw this, and the women saw this, and what's going on, and who's happening." It's all confusion. It's all ruckus. It's all energy. And Jesus appears in the middle of that and says, "Shalom," like he just walked in the door, like this is a normal gathering, and everybody freaks out. It's kind of a natural experience. The person you just watched die and be buried days ago is standing there, and immediately they think ghost. Reasonable assumption. Even today, with all of our science, we still think ghost. And Jesus said, "No, of course not. I'm a ghost. I told you this is going to happen. Look, touch me, feel me. I've got flesh. I've risen from the dead, just like I told you it was going to be. I'm the completion of all the laws, all the prophets, all the Psalms, all the information that the Hebrew Scripture ever told you. I'm it. I'm the Messiah. I'm the one. This is my Christ moment." And they're really not sure what's going on. And then he turns to someone and says, "Is there food? I'm hungry." And as a mother, I have to laugh at that section. Who has not had kids in the middle of heaven knows what going on turn to them and say, "Feed me, please. I'm hungry. What's going on?" I can't hear it not as a parent. So we have Jesus in the middle of all this cacophony sitting down and having a meal because maybe he wants to prove that he really is flesh and blood. Look, he's swallowing, he's chewing, it's going down, there's nothing coming out, it's nothing magical. But on the other hand, he's been in a tomb for 3 days. He's probably really hungry, and he wants to be fed and he wants to just be part of what's going on. And so just picture it. I mean, he's sitting down at the table with all these people standing up. Some might actually eventually come to the table and sit with him, but they're all in a state of what the heck is going on? Now, in Luke's gospel, this is all the same day. John's gospel tells us the whole experience with Thomas was a week later. Luke doesn't give us this. Luke is keeping it active. It is going steady. The tension is there. And if you read from the beginning of the verse of the 24th chapter, you're going to feel that tension. And Jesus is in the middle of this eating fish. What do you do with that, really? What do you do with that? But force yourself to sit down and think this is absolutely the most absurd thing ever. And that's kind of where we are on the third Sunday of Easter. The absurdity, the strangeness, the weird of Jesus just presenting and being a fully fleshed human after they all saw his torture and execution and death. It does not make sense. And that's where the faith part comes in. Jesus tells them, you are my witnesses. This is not a one-on-one exchange. This isn't a message left. This is an opportunity for those who are closest to Jesus to really listen to what he's saying. He has taught them. This is not the first time they have encountered this message. 3 times prior to that, he told them, this is what's going to happen. When I get to Jerusalem, they're going to arrest me. I'm going to be tortured. I'm going to be put to death. I'll rise again. 3 times he has told that to his followers. And it's beyond comprehension. And here they are seeing the result of not only those 3 warnings, but the actual event. And they're having to sit and make sense of it. And Jesus looks around at them. And in the scripture says, he opens their mind. What a glorious moment that must have been when the confusion dies down, that energy that blocks reasonable thought dies down. And they are sitting there, it's like, oh, now we get this. You said it was going to happen. It defies any reason we've all experienced. But now we get it. And Jesus leaves them in this verse with the commission. You are the witnesses. It's your job now to go and tell other people. And it's your job to risk. See, one of the things that with Christianity, and why the resurrection is taught with the crucifixion, well, we can't separate Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and we encountered this on even Good Friday. It's hard to just let Easter Sunday go when we're focusing on Good Friday. The reason we do this, the reason the two are connected, is because it would be so simple just to spiritualize all of this. And many throughout history have tried to do that. We call them heresies in most Christian thought. This whole idea that we take Jesus away from his humanity. This is the reason Mary got the message of incarnation, was that Jesus' spirit and humanity were so interlinked that they could not be separated. And that's the message we get on this third Sunday in Easter as well. The crucifixion and the resurrection are so closely linked. We cannot make this just a spiritual encounter. We can't ghost this away. We can't say that the followers were out of their mind or having a fantasy transformation. They physically encountered Jesus as a living life form, as a living presence, sitting among them. And when the shock wore off, or at least wore down, he tells them, this is the way it was always going to go. This is what you now have to go forth and witness. And you have to talk about forgiveness. And you have to help people recognize their sins. We talked about this last week, that sins are brokenness. You have to help people recognize that. You have to help make them whole. And I don't think there is any better setting for us as modern hearers than our current reality with COVID. If you are in any of the hot spots right now, we're back in lockdown, or we're looking at the devastation. And we're not recognizing the real people paying the price. We're spending a lot of time for those who have the benefit of money and privilege and a job you can do from home, whining about their lack of liberties, while the poor and the marginalized, the people Jesus highlighted as being important and needing special care and attention, are the ones who are being left behind, are being ignored. They're not being given the financial support they need. They're not being given the permission to not go to work. They don't have a desk job. They don't have a very easy dial it in job. They have to actually physically be there. And those in manufacturing facilities that are not there for food, they have to create things that respond to the gluttony of those who are able to isolate and take care of themselves and not be as great at risk. Jesus' message today all makes us think. How do we, as people who hear the message of equality and equity and reach out to the poor, feed the hungry, take care of the sick, how do we put all of that together with Jesus telling us, you are the witness of the resurrection? Some churches have just decided that all they want to do is focus on salvation and the resurrection and Easter Sunday, and totally forget that that is completely interwoven with the bodily reality that Jesus lived, that the poor and the marginalized needed the benefit and help of the privileged and those who could rest on their laurels, that it was a joint connection. We did not get to just hear the message of Christ and say, oh, goody for us, and then nothing changed. We had to change. We still have to change and reach out to those. I don't know how. I don't have answers. It's extremely frustrating. I actually had this conversation with someone this morning. How do we see the brokenness in our society, the sin in our society, and not respond? And how do we respond? Jesus said we are the witnesses to all the laws, all the promises, all the expectations of both scriptures. How do we witness? How do we get out of our cocoon and our bubble of privilege and try to make a difference to the people that Jesus gave his life for to make a difference? How do we do that? It's really rough. And if you are old, or if you have put in your time, or if you feel that you are totally without agency in this, how do you rise to the challenge that Jesus tosses down to his followers in that room that Sunday, and to us by extension? How do we step up? Because if we are driven by the Christ of resurrection, we are driven to make a difference. Forgiveness of sins is not telling someone, oh, you know what, you shouldn't have stole that candy bar, but God forgives that oversight. That's superficial. That is not sin. Sin is saying, what I want is more important than what you need. And my wants contribute to your brokenness, and I don't care. That's sin. And Jesus said we are to go in and forgive sins. Not a blanket, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, God forgives all. But forgiveness was an action. It wasn't just words. It was physically getting in there, changing people's worlds. Jesus was there at a time when there was incredible inequity. We are also in a time of incredible inequity. In fact, the reality is that never goes away. We cannot, as followers of Christ, just put our feet up and call it a day. We have got to agitate to do better. If that means pushing elected officials to do what needs to be done, we have to do that. If it means how we spend money, making it thoughtful and meaningful, we have to do that. If it means making ourselves uncomfortable, we have to do that. Many people, all of you, can probably come up with some more ways to help the marginalized out there, to be the witnesses. Jesus did not come back from the dead so we could just carry on as standard practice. Jesus came back from the dead to challenge us to make it happen. He did all this teaching and all this work during his ministry. With his death and resurrection, it now becomes our responsibility in all the generations through time of Christians who have been followers. We are the witnesses. We are the ones who have to take Jesus' lead. We are the ones that have to complete the idea that all the laws, all the prophets, all the songs, all the joy, all the celebration, all the crises, all the sadnesses, everything has Jesus in them, acting functionally to make it better. We are now given that commission. We are all up to it. We just have to decide that we will be those witnesses. It's not going to be easy, but it's the right thing to do.